Today's portion that I'm going to read out of the Hebrew Tanakh is VAYAKHEL, and he assembled. He assembled Moses, all of the Hebrews and Israelites together for the very, very first time out of captivity in Egypt to let them know. And we will see that the characteristics of these people today is that they can't even come together and get along. It's like they can't even come in unification unless there is one leader, like we had Martin Luther King, and then everybody came together. So we've seen throughout history and throughout the word that it always had to take a prophet or Yahweh to bring someone great to bring them together. And this is the very first time that the Israelites had came together and made amends to work together and follow these rules and learn these rules on the Sabbath, and were to every Sabbath learn another spiritual, worldly law and dietary law, which is 613 precepts, which means 613 laws. And the reading for today is going to be out of Exodus 35 all the way to chapter 38. All right, and chapter 38, and then 2 Kings 11:17 and 12:17, and then Matthew 14 through 30. And I really want to iterate on this. A lot of people will take this because of what was done during those times and try to fashion it to their own liking and saying, hey, you got to make 10,000 tithe offerings. Look at what they did. You got to put all this money and all this other stuff and give up all this or whatever, and then try to use this as a manipulation thing. But this is what happened, and I'm going to try to make this quick. Exodus 35 through 38 speaks of how basically, when he came, everybody had to offer up gold, silver, whatever they had, all right, as a sin offering. This was a sin offering that they had to offer up, all right, that was called expiations. And expiations, all right, basically means that you're making an amends, you're making an atonement for your repentance of sins and your wrongdoings. So they would go and they would give the priest the money. This money was never deposited or stored in the house of God whatsoever. It was given to the priest to go out to do what he had to do in the community. They would give up their earrings, their gold, everything to them to make all the stuff that was needed at that time, and they worked together to do it. Everybody that had a skill would go and do that skill. So when they made fine linen and did all that stuff and the cloths and the robes, some of that stuff they would make out of billy goat hair. And the women, they would make the stuff out of billy goat hair. Now the same attributes and the ways that they would use to make the wool and do all that other stuff, the garments with the billy goat hair, is the same attributes that we see that when they went back into Egypt in the captivity and slavery that they used for the cotton fields. So back then, even when they used the same technique, but one was just cotton, the other one was billy goat hair, for garments, we see that even back then, if you do the research, you'll see the newspaper clippings or the posters that would say, hey, bond woman sale. And then back then they used to call them he-boos, HEE-BOO. So they used to call them he-boos back then, right? More historical fact of who these people are. So that basically was Exodus 35 through 38. They gave them garments, they worked together as a unity. Anytime anybody sinned, they would come up and they'd give it to the priest. The priest would never store it in the house. He would just go do it because Yahweh was trying to bring them out of captivity and that mindset and those actions that was going on. The Pharaoh used to proclaim taxes and all this other stuff, but Yahweh wasn't going to do the tax thing. You come every Sabbath, you give, your 10%, you do what you have to do out of the righteousness. If you sin or do whatever, you come and you'll pay a contribute for that sin, which would go, the further on, for these people in this nation, and it would work like that. That's how, and that was a part of Yahweh. So, boom, that's the etymology behind that. Now this right here is Kings 11:17 and 12:17. 11:17, 2 Kings. O Jehoiada. Instead of me saying Jehoiada, because we know J is only 500 years old, I'm going to say Jehoiada. And Jehoiada solemnized the covenant between the Lord on one hand and the king and the people on the other, as well as between the king and the people that yet should be the people of the Lord. Now what does that mean? That means that he put his hand on the covenant, as we see people do when they put their hand on the Bible and they swear an oath or they do whatever every time they get into office or an officer position or whatever. They always swear an oath on the Bible. What he did is he would put his hand on the covenant, taking the blessings in the spirit and the word of the Lord and the laws, and then blessing everybody like this while his hand was on this covenant. Now 12:17. Money brought as a guilt offering or as a sin offering was not deposited in the house of the Lord. It went to the priest, as I was explaining before, for the priest to do their thing. Now also I'm going to read out of Matthew. All right, Matthew 25 through 30. On chapter 25, verse 25 through 30. So I was afraid. All right, I'm sorry. 14 through 30, I mean. All right. For it will be like a man going on a journey who was called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to the other one he gave 2, to the other one he gave 1, and then they went away. He who received the 5 talents once went out and traded them, and he made 5 talents more. So also the one who had 2 talents, he made 2 talents more. But the one who had received the 1 talent went and dug it in the ground and hid his master's money. But now after a long time the master of the servants came and settled the accounts with them, and he who received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. The master said to him, Well done, good servant. You have been a faithful servant over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he who also had 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered me 2 talents, and here I made 2 talents more. The master said to him, Well done, good faithful servant. You have been faithful for over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He who also had received 1 talent came forward to the master. I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter any seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid the talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But the master answered him, You wicked, slothful servant. You knew I would reap where I have not sown, and you knew I would gather where I had scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested your money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him, and take the talent from him, give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he who will have abundance. But the one who has not, even he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant out into the outer darkness, in the place where there will be gnashing of teeth. Now, a lot of people will try to fashion that to their own liking, all right? And they will really, really, really try to fashion it to their own liking about money and bankers and the whole 9 yards. Understand one thing. Yeshua knew the analogy, and they knew the analogy of what everything was fashioned and built on. Pharaoh and all of them did it in Egypt. When the Grecians came on the line, the Grecians and the Romans had fashioned everything for economical and political means. That's what it is. Everything. I mean, if it was an ant, they would get an ant on the ground, put some chocolate on it, and tell you, hey, we're making money off this ant now. And it's $10, you have this chocolate ant. So that's how it was. So he used the banking system as an analogy, all right? as a metaphor. It wasn't all about the money and all this other stuff. What he was basically saying is that I'm giving you 2 abilities, you have 5 abilities, or you have 5 abilities, or talents. If you don't take the God-given talents that he gives you and use it for righteousness and good, and come back and say, this is all the good things that I've done with what you blessed me with, whether if it's singing, drawing, talking, writing, architect, whether if you're a newscaster, I don't care if you're laying pipes in the ground, no matter what you do, if you don't take that talent and do something good with it and have something to show for it, all right, in a righteous good way, then guess what? You just, you might as well go to hell with everybody else, especially with the actions, works, and faith. That's what that means. So I don't, a lot of people try to do it for the money part of it. And why don't you invest it with the bankers? Who are the bankers? The one that are winning. So if money and a talent or a talent is the word of God or a talent for something good, and who are the bankers? Why didn't you invest it with the priests? Why didn't you invest your love with something so they could try to help you do something righteous with it, so that way it will gain interest? Why didn't you invest it with God? All right, because God is the big banker. So that way you're giving him double back of what he gave you. If he gives you $1, all right, and he's the big banker, all right, of souls, then you're supposed to come back and give him double that. Show him that you did, or give it to him, so that way when the Messiah comes, you have an interest. All of this is a spiritual meaning. So with that, he assembled all the people together, just like today, at this living time, we are living prophecy. We all need to be assembled together to come in one thinking, one mindset, and one emotion, and one spirit within the one true God.